We have a number of people here this evening who came to the specific issue of the Carroll School, and I wondered if the committee would consider taking that out of order. It's in new business, but I wondered if we might be able to address that earlier this evening.
Hear the request, if there's no objections, we'll move to item, new business, item 8.1. Motion to receive. There's an order to receive. Motion by Mr. Gravel. Receive, dispense with reading. Seconded by Ms. Boren. Remarks? Mr. McGee.
Yes. Allison, if you would be so kind as to distribute the motions that I've made with regards to that I plan to make this evening regarding the Carroll School. And I don't anticipate this evening that there's going to be a great deal of fanfare and turmoil regarding this issue. I think the Carroll School parents, who I guess have been felt that their students have been kind of left out in the cold, kind of turned up the heat the other evening, and so I think they made their position far more articulate than I could. And as a result of that meeting, I think everyone who has an opinion on the Carroll School certainly has formulated it by now, and I would therefore like to make the following proposed motions, and I'd like to just read them all to you before we vote on them. The first motion I will make first of the four will be to request the school building committee be authorized to identify a site or sites within the Thomas Carroll School District upon which to build a new elementary school large enough to accommodate 600 students. My second motion will be to request that the mayor and the city council...
You want to take them one at a time, or you want to do them all?
I'd like to read them all through, okay, Mr. Mayor, if I may. And the second motion is to request that the mayor and the city council appropriate the funds necessary to build a new school to replace the present Thomas Carroll School, ready to take occupancy by September 2002. The third motion I'll be making is to request that a letter be sent to the members of the City Council stating our support for the efforts of City Councilor Joseph Silver to pursue the acquisition of a minimal portion of Conley Park, preferably by means of a land swap with the existing Thomas Carroll School site, to be used for the sole purpose of constructing a new school to replace the Thomas Carroll School. And my fourth and final motion will be to reaffirm a previous vote of this committee to start in June of 1999 the process to build a new school to replace the Thomas Carroll School, and further to have that school ready for occupancy by September of 2002. And if anyone has been to that school, and I know that everyone in this room has been there, I think the reason for the urgency and the need is quite evident, and I guess we can have remarks on this, but my hope is that these things will pass quickly, and the city certainly has the means to take care of this issue simultaneously with some of the other issues that are before this committee, such as the high school and the potential crowding issues that are facing us. So I therefore will now make motion number 1, and if it is seconded, I guess we can have remarks on it at that time. And again, I'll read the motion number 1 again. To request that the school building committee be authorized to identify a site or sites within the Thomas Carroll School District upon which to build a new elementary school large enough to accommodate 600 students. So moved.
Second. Heard the motion by Mr. McGee, second by Mr. Gravel. Remarks?
Remarks,
Mr. Liakis.
I think we all went over this the other night, and we covered it pretty well, but I just want to say that we take a lot of votes in school committee, and there are only a few each year that really count. And this is one of those times when the motions really count, because I believe that this does what is necessary from the school committee level to start the ball rolling and get this off the ground. And I believe that you people need to stay involved, because it's still a long process. You have to watch it carefully. You have to stay with it. You have to guide it all the way through, because sometimes these things can get lost. But this evening, I believe that the school committee will take, well, I hope it will. It hasn't been voted yet, but I believe that and hope that the school committee will take the proper action. And again, it's my privilege to vote for this. this is what you go and run for office for, and this is what it's all about. So I look forward to this vote.
Further remarks?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Mr. Walsh.
One is a procedural question. On motion 3, we're talking about the issue of Connolly Park. In motion 1, we're talking about identifying a site or sites. And I'm wondering if there's somehow you can combine them. I'm not sure that they're exclusive of each other. For one second, I'm wondering whether we should look at them separately or whether we should combine a couple of them. And the other issue, I agree that the school building committee should be authorized to start searching for a site. I am of the opinion that we need a separate school building committee to focus specifically on the Carroll School, and I had some language drafted in that regard, and I'm not sure whether it's appropriate at this point or later in these motions. So, I support the concept here. I'm wondering whether 1 and 3 should be combined so that we're looking at all sites. Saying that Connolly Park is of interest to the committee. If you can separate them for me.
Through the chair. Yeah, you're right, Mr. Walsh, and I thought about combining them, and the reason that I decided that they were better served independently is that I didn't want the Connolly Park to be the sole location we look for. I didn't want to tie the hands of the Building Needs Committee. That seems the logical spot for most people who have looked at this, but I didn't want to eliminate any other potential sites by saying that. So I want to support Councilor Silva's efforts to do that, but I don't want that to be to the exclusion of any other potential sites.
Yeah, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walsh and then Ms. Bourne.
I think we're saying the same thing. In motion number 3, you're specifically talking about Connolly Park, but in motion 1, you're saying identify sites or sites within the Thomas Carroll School District. So I'm just wondering, for the sake of things, whether you take the language in motion number 1 and add it to the end of motion 3, so that you're endorsing the city council's efforts, and then saying, in addition to that, looking at additional sites.
I don't want to belabor the point, and if Mr. Walsh is more comfortable incorporating both motions, I have no problem doing that.
I would, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
If there's no objections, if the maker of the motion has no objections, you can incorporate it.
I will incorporate motions 1 and 3.
Thank you.
Ms. Bourne.
I just had a question regarding sending this to the building committee and authorizing them to choose a site. I'm of the opinion that we should perhaps ask the school building committee to look into hiring an architect to take a look at this, and perhaps an architect to take a look at the existing site, the existing building, the adjacent property, the park, as well as working with the city in looking at other sites that are available, and then bringing that forward to the building committee and presenting that to the building committee at that point.
I think the motion says identify, not select. I think the school committee would have final say on any site on any school district. The only point I would make is that I do have a printout of every site in Ward 3 that's over 3 acres. A lot of them are in hazardous waste areas, Pulaski Street parkland, wetlands. And the thing I would suggest, and I'm not suggesting that it be done, if in fact this is not doable, you may want to incorporate into this, if all else fails, a rehab. And the reason I suggest that, taking parkland is an absolute difficult situation given what's happening on the state level. And if you don't find a site, my guess is that you may be looking at a rehab, and it's either that, quite frankly, I'm being very candid because I'm not going to mislead people. I think it's impossible to get it done by the year 2000 without a site already in place. And going through the legislature and all that's going to take a considerable length of time. So I would suggest, if you want to leave the bathrooms like they are for the next 5 or 7 years, the question I have is whether, in fact, if all else fails, and I'm not here because there are people in this committee that will not vote for eminent domain, but if all else fails, I would suggest that you might want to have the feasibility study include also rehab and you can say you're against rehab, but if the question becomes if there's no other alternative,
Yeah.
then that has to be the alternative.
Well, through the chair, I would not be willing to incorporate rehab. As I said publicly, and I'll say again this evening, I will not support 5 more cents to rehabbing that building. I think it's outlived its useful life, and I'd much rather see the money's going to a new facility and be eligible for state reimbursement, where we get $2 for every $1 we spend. I think that's...
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm suggesting to you only is that there is a program now being developed at the state level that provides reimbursement for Category 3. I'm only suggesting that if you do not have a site and you can't build a new school, you can't leave that, if you feel that strongly, the way it is. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I understand your position, Mr. Mayor, but my position is that I find it hard to believe when inner cities can build buildings that we cannot find, if we have the will, I cannot believe that we cannot get a new Carroll School built in that school district, and again, if we have the will to do this, I also can't believe that we would have to wait 4 or 5 years to do this. So while I respect your position, there are no elements there which I'm willing to incorporate into mine.
Any further remarks?
Remark.
Yeah, Mr. Gravel.
It would seem to me, even if all else did fail, we could always bring it back to this committee as well. So while I can understand your point, I certainly, I don't know that we, before the feasibility study, have to concern ourselves with worrying whether it's a refurb or a rebuild. I too feel that to put $10 or $12 million into a building that's probably lived its useful life at this point in time is frankly not a good use of funds. And I'd like to see us exhaust all possibilities in terms of land. And while others would say that they wouldn't support eminent domain, my feeling is that if it required eminent domain to build a new school, that I would support it, as I did in the past, because I believe that the needs of the community as a whole sometimes come at a high priority. So I would not like to put anything about rehab in there. I'd like to exhaust all means in terms of looking for building site, including a land swap, and I hope that Council Silva lives up to his commitment that he made the other night, that he will bring it before the council, because I do believe that might be an alternative for us.
Any further remarks? Roll call.
Mr. Garabedian?
Yes.
Mr. McGinny?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Liackos?
Yes.
Ms. Lauren?
Yes.
Mr. Gravel?
Yes. Item 2. Motion 2.
Motion 2 is to request that the mayor and the city council appropriate the funds necessary to build a new school to replace the present Thomas Carroll School, ready to take occupancy by September 2002. So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. McGaney.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Liackos. Remarks? Roll call. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Walsh.
just very quickly, I have no objection to the motion, but I do agree that the 2002 deadline is ambitious, and everybody should know that up front. If you look at what's happening with the Brown School and all the different hoops that we go through along the way, I just don't want anybody to mislead to think that in 2002 the doors will open. That should be the goal, and hopefully we can reach that. But if for some reason that doesn't happen, parents and staff should be aware of that there is always that possibility, but that we will work towards that as hard as we can.
Roll call. I'm sorry. Anybody else have a comment? Roll call.
Mr. Garabedian?
Yes.
Mr. McGinny?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Liackos?
Yes.
Ms. Lauren?
Yes.
Number 4.
Hey, don't I get to vote?
Mr. Gravel?
Gee,
He passed. Okay.
I know I haven't pulled my papers yet, but I haven't given up either.
Yes. Mr. McGaney.
And motion number 4, to reaffirm a previous vote of this committee to start in June of 1999 the process to build a new school to replace the Thomas Carroll School, and further, to have that school ready for occupancy by September of 2002. And if I could just add a comment, because it kind of falls in line with what Mr. Walsh was saying. This is an aggressive...
Motion by Mr. McGaney, seconded by Mr. Gravel. Mr. McGaney.
This is an aggressive timeline, but I also think that it's realistic, once again, if we have the will. So that's why that date is in there.
Remarks? Roll call.
One, I'm sorry,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman,
Go
very
ahead.
briefly, I would, speaking to the Carroll School parents, you did a wise thing in bringing your community leaders together to act on this and to talk about it, and I would advise you to take that a step further and perhaps meet with your state representatives, the state senator. At some point in time, you need to talk to council members other than Joe Silver. I see another counselor here as well. It's wonderful to see that kind of support for you. But I think in order to get a project like this done, if you see and anticipate things at the state level, at the city level, it's wonderful to meet with these people and have the kinds of meetings that you had in the gym so they can see the conditions and talk to them about your concerns. So do what you did, do to them what you did to us. It's very effective.
Further remarks? Roll call.
Mr. Garabedian?
Yes.
Mr. McGinny?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Liakis?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Gravel?
Yes.
Next item of business, recommendation, out-of-state field trips, item 6. I'm sorry.
Before we go on that issue,
Yeah.
I had a motion, this is something that I touched on briefly before Mr. McGee's motion, and if it's in order, I would like to make a motion to establish a school building committee whose primary mission would be addressing the needs of the construction at Carroll School, and the members would be appointed by the mayor in accordance with state law. And on that motion, if I get a second.
There's a motion by Mr. Walsh, seconded by Mr. McGaney.
Mr. Chairman, the reason that I think there should be a separate school building needs committee is that the plate is getting very full for the current committee. It's a very able group of people, and I in no way want to insult them, but I do think that if we are going to follow through on the ambitious timeline that has been set forth, that I think that we need a separate group of people who are committed to just that project.
Let me, I hear what you're saying. The only question I have is, there's a pretty effective group. The question is, maybe we should ask them if they can handle it. I see Kendra Pisa here, she's on there, and others who are familiar with the process. The thing I'm concerned about is if you bring in a whole new group of people, it's going out and seeking out engineers, attorneys, and people who are competent in that area of dealing with that expertise. And if they say, and these people are selected based on their ability, I mean, I would suggest if they say to us it's too much for them to handle, then I would suggest a new committee. The problem becomes the superintendent and a member of the school committee has to be on that committee. And the problem you have is they'll be meeting on Monday, they'll be meeting on Tuesday. And my guess is, unless they tell us they can't do it, I'm not trying to discourage it, I'm just suggesting that it's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be a learning curve.
I have a couple thoughts, Mr. Mayor. I feel pretty strongly about this, but I'm willing to, if you need a couple weeks, perhaps, and I would be willing to have a conversation with the members of the school building committee to make sure that they are.
When's your next meeting, Kendra? I'm sorry.
2 weeks.
June 7th.
I think Dr. Prulo's there and Mr. Gravel's there. And
Okay.
if you want to sit down and talk to him, I mean, there is a
I would like
representative.
to do that. If that doesn't, if they determine that they have both the time, I'm not questioning anybody's ability,
No, I know that. No,
but
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
time issue. And if in fact they do have the time, then at the next meeting, what I would suggest is that if we're not going to do a separate school building committee, that we set up a special task force consisting of the principal of the Carroll School, a teacher, and perhaps one of the custodians or maintenance people from within the city, along with 3 parents and a school committee person, just to be sure, not to create another layer of bureaucracy. However, I think their issues are unique, and that we ought to have one group that is focused primarily on that. So my preference would be a separate committee, but I'm willing to wait 2 weeks to get some type of assurance from the current committee. And if they're comfortable, then I will come back with a request for a task force to work with them.
Okay. Any further comments?
So my motion would be then, if I might...
Why don't you send the motion to the school building committee, asking them what their time constraints are and their ability to deal with
And
it.
if I could be on the agenda for a week.
That's fine, sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to get a motion first. Is that a form of a motion?
Yes.
A motion by Mr. Wallace, second by Mr. McGee. Dr. Poole?
Yeah, just two comments that are related, I think. One is that the school building committee voted last night, although we don't have it officially on paper to provide you, to recommend to the school committee that you conduct a feasibility study of the Carroll School, as we did for the Brown, as we did for all of the other schools. That will be coming to us. That was voted last night. The other thing, just in the way of logistics, is I believe we have a city council meeting on the 7th, which is the night of the building committee meeting. But the building committee meeting is usually at 6. And I guess if that council meeting is at 7 or 7:30, and you wish to be put on that agenda, Mr. Walsh, at 6 o'clock, I can always call Mr. Blodgett and make sure that you get on there, if that's what you'd like.
I'll talk to my boss and get an early release. Yeah, I would like that, thank you.
Okay. Tom, you want to read your motion again?
The motion would be to request the school building committee for, to be put on their June 7th agenda to discuss their ability and willingness to address the Carroll School issue.
Heard the motion by Mr. Walsh, seconded by Ms. Bowen. Remarks? All in favor? All opposed? Is a vote. Next item of business is item 3, recommendation out-of-state field trip. This is the...
Move that it be received, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Liakis, receive, dispense, reading, seconded by. Second. Mr. Garabedian, remarks?
Mark, Mr. Chairman, I hate to throw water on this fire, and I know Mark Metropolis, and he's a great teacher and all, and I give him credit for doing the ski club, but I have my reservations about parasailing. And if it's something that the school committee should be, or the superintendent should be approving, I believe there's a certain amount of risk involved that may, in my opinion, be unnecessary that we want to approve our students to be exposed to. So I have reservations about this. There are some things that are sanctioned by the school. They have, I don't know, parasailing?
Comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I have that reservation. That's why I wrote on this, parent permission slips are required, to remind Mr. Padalea. It's a U.S. Coast Guard certified facility. I cannot say to you with knowledge that they've done this before. I don't know if this is a new event or an event they've done in prior years. But I do recommend it because I have confidence in Mark Metropolis, and if the parents sign off, although I have to say that it would impact on our insurance somewhat as well in the city, because once you approve this, it is a school condoned trip, so there are some liabilities out there, and it's a